All right, so I think just in the interest of time, we're gonna at least start introductions. So I'd like to officially welcome the group. I'm sad that I can't see everyone. I'm really excited to present with Eleanor, who's going to introduce herself in a second, and I will too. We're going to talk about Beyond Talking, targeted exposures for the bathroom and eating. I'm Dr. Rachel Busman. I'm a clinical psychologist, and I am a board member of SMA and really love being a member or a board member, past president, and I'm a clinical psychologist at Cognitive and Behavioral Consultants, where I run the Child and Adolescent Anxiety and Related Disorders program and our SM program, our intensive called Voices Rising. And I'm here with a good friend and colleague, Eleanor, and I'm going to let her introduce herself.
Sure. I'm an LCSW. I live in Nashville, Tennessee, and have a practice child and family therapy collective where we treat kids with SM and related disorders, as well as other related treatments in the PCIT family. That's our wheelhouse down here.
Awesome. So we're just going to give you a little roadmap for today. We're going to talk about anxiety and exposures. Not a surprise. We're going to talk about the bathroom. We're going to talk about eating, and we're going to do Q&A throughout and chat throughout, but we will dedicate about 15 minutes for questions. We want to acknowledge that this webinar was made possible by a generous grant from the Gordon and Marilyn Macklin Foundation. I also want to acknowledge Kristen Leos, who's not visible, but is a board member, and she's in charge of membership and special initiatives, and she's very behind the scenes and very active, so thank you. Just a little bit of housekeeping. If you are obtaining CEs, you need to stay for the entire presentation. The platform CE Go tracks your participation, so if you log off too soon, then you won't be able to obtain your CEs. After the presentation, if you go into the attendee dashboard, you'll be able to rate the presentation, which will then generate the certificate that you need. And as a reminder, we're going to use both the Q&A feature and the chat. The chat is going to be open to everybody, so that if you want to make a suggestion, you want to give a thumbs up, you want to praise somebody or give an idea, you can share with other people. In the Q&A, you do need to click a little box that says anonymous if you would like your question to be anonymous. And Eleanor and I are going to manage expectations and say we may not get to all questions or comments, and we will try to. And we are able to save the features of the chat and questions, so we can always create more content and answer questions later. Okay. And I'm really excited that we asked you. We wanted to start within the Parents of Children with Selective Mutism Facebook group. I can't remember what number our membership is up to, or the membership on that Facebook group is, but it's a lot. So we asked you what your child struggles with, and you were able to indicate all of these things, none of these things, or some of these things. And so a really large percentage, so 46% noted using the bathroom at school is challenging. We didn't get into the nitty gritties of why, but that's a pretty significant number. With 18% using the bathroom in public being a challenge. So doesn't necessarily surprise me that that's a lower percentage, but still difficult. And then eating at school, more than twice as hard as eating in public. And we just want to note that using the bathroom, a lot of times this gets asked, that using the bathroom, or, is using the bathroom at school, or is eating diagnostically related? Like, is that specific to selective mutism? And it's not per se, but it is, but this is common, and you're seeing it here, right? And there's a question, how many parents participated in the survey? That's a really good question, and we can certainly try to find out. I am not 100% sure, but we could certainly, when it's not my turn, I can try to find out. And Kristen, if you're available and you could reach out to Jenny, maybe we could find out. But I don't think it was I don't think it was like 5 people. I think it was a good number of people. Eleanor, you think so?
I remember over 400 is the number that's triggering in my brain.
There.
Okay.
Great. So we're going to start, as this shouldn't be a surprise that when we talk about things that are related to anxiety, we want to talk a bit about anxiety and exposures in general. And so what do we know about things that cause distress? First, it's really natural and in fact important that we as humans and organisms or animals can stay away from things that are dangerous. right? So it keeps us alive. You know, we've survived as a species because we can stay out of danger, know when not to eat a poisonous plant, or stay away from dangerous situations. So that's good. The good news is survival is important. The less good news is that we can have false alarms that sort of send a signal of this is dangerous, stay away from this, when in fact that situation isn't dangerous per se. Might it cause distress? For sure. Might it be anxiety provoking? Absolutely, but not inherently dangerous. Like talking is not dangerous, or using the toilet isn't dangerous, right? Now, kids can't always tell us or clearly explain what the concern is about anything, right? You know, very often kids don't say, you know, the reason, Mom, that I was having a tantrum earlier is that actually I'm a bit of a combination of tired and hungry. And I actually had not a great math class today. Like, I don't know a lot of adults that are that savvy. So they show it in their body with hiding, crying, protesting, resisting. Similarly, not uncommonly, we see anxiety disorders present with physical complaints. So when kids say, my stomach hurts, my head hurts, my throat hurts, that's real. Just like when we know, if I have to get on a plane, as I did the other day and had a snafu with my ticket, and my son said, Mommy, you're sweating a lot. He was right. And my fight and flight system was actually working very well. It was a little embarrassing that I was sweating that much, but the point is, that's what happens. And as caregivers and parents and therapists too, it's natural that we want to relieve a child's distress. In fact, we wouldn't be very empathic humans if we weren't oriented towards distress signals, right? So our children don't just come out of the womb or are born and they just naturally survive. They need to be able to signal to a caregiver, this is scary, this is bad, this is dangerous, and we naturally want to relieve distress. And practicing something, even the avoidance of something, means you get better at it. So when we unintentionally and lovingly let's say, only use a specific bathroom with a parent present, or we wait to feed our child until after school, while that might actually be a reasonable short-term solution, it also creates some reinforcement of certain behaviors. So we're going to talk about that more. So what's negative reinforcement? You know, clinicians or psychologists, we all love to sort of use fancy terms. And so it's just a fancy way of saying that we naturally stay away from situations, or we avoid situations that cause distress. And so, for example, if a child faces an anxiety-provoking situation and the child shows distress in some way, could be crying, could be pinching, could be running away, it could be a combination of those things, could be freezing. Usually an adult is going to show some empathy, like, I see you, I see your distress. And what can sometimes happen is some kind of rescuing or enabling. Now, it's important, well, we can talk about this, what one person's rescuing is another person's appropriate accommodation. So we'll talk later, you know, if Eleanor hasn't yet used a toilet near her classroom and a teacher goes with her, or a parent is in the school, that might be a very appropriate temporary accommodation. But doing that for a child that can independently do whatever that task is on their own would be considered rescuing. And what happens is then that reinforces what happens naturally. We stay out of a situation that's anxiety provoking, which makes sense, right? And then we all kind of feel better about that. Whew, thank goodness I stayed out of that situation. I feel much less anxious, and it basically reinforces the likelihood of that happening again. And it can kind of be powerful. Sometimes just avoiding a few times can really reinforce that particular situation or context. So again, I hope that we convey that there's no blame here. This is natural. We all do it. And what we're going to talk about is the opposite, is of reversing that cycle. And so before I hand it over to Eleanor, just because we like to present things in a different way, this is basically the same thing, just in a different way. Scary situation can lead to avoidance, which can lead to rescuing, which can lead to accidentally reinforcing, which actually just promotes more reinforcement and makes it harder to do the thing that's hard. So I am going to actually, we are going to, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. Perfect.
I'm going to stop sharing so that I can hand that over.
And hopefully this works. You guys can see that okay?
I can see it okay.
Perfect. All right. I'm going to put this on slideshow. All right, so when we're in that cycle, right, to break it, just like what Rachel was saying, just remember, all of you are really great parents. If you have kids that have these issues, and really great parents don't want to see their kids in pain. And so as we work to edit that in the future, I always say our job is to edit and optimize our kids' functioning. And the best way to do that is to help our kid break down those really big, scary events into smaller tasks that feel more doable, so then they can go do the big scary thing. But that's not going to happen overnight. It is so common for us to accidentally reinforce the avoidance because we're really great people and loving humans that never want to see a kid suffer. And remember, you could raise two kids exactly the same, put them through the same situations. One kid it develops severe anxiety and the other is rocking and rolling, and you may have had the exact same interaction and you helped them through it. So it's not anybody's fault. I feel like we always need to say that a lot because we never want you guys to go down the self-blame game. It's not fair to you, and it's definitely not fair to your kids. So as we work through these exposures with our kids, you have that process where you see this pink peak panic here at the top of the screen. If you were to go into the hardest situation, this would be too hard, you would get decompensation. And so what we want to do is take a smaller goal. We're going to break down the larger goal into, say, 5 steps. And we're going to give you some examples with 5 steps later. That's why I'm using that number. It's not always exactly 5 steps. We're going to take the smallest rung on the ladder and let our bodies habituate to feeling the anxiety. Now, we don't actually stop feeling anxious when we do our practice here. What we do, our bodies are doing, is they're getting better at feeling the anxiety and more successful at recovering more effectively. So we're teaching a skill to a child or whoever is feeling the anxiety. This is the same for adults as it is for kids, about that it is safe to approach and feel it and ride that wave. I always talk about, we want our kids to ride the wave because in their day, say it's eating in front of people, there are 4 or 5 opportunities sometimes in a day, whether they're at camp or school, whatever it is, to eat a snack at school or a camp, and or drink liquid at school. And so if that's coming up multiple times a day, first they get through the first wave, and then the anxiety is going to come back. And we have to teach our kids that they're able to ride the wave and stay safe at the same time. Because what Rachel was saying is that our bodies are trained accidentally that behavior is not safe. Right? So right here, you see on the screen that we have that peak panic, and every time we do that same exposure, it gets to be less bad. It doesn't get better, but it does get less bad, and our kids are more successful moving through it. And we have this, I can do it. We always want to make sure our kids are building that self-efficacy, that they can do hard things. One of my favorite ways to work with kids when they're doing hard things is say, your body might tell you a little bit of a lie, or it might play a joke on you and tell you can't do this, and then I wait and they fill in the blank, and they say, but I can do it. I'm stronger than that thought. And so we want to make sure we have that idea. So our brains are rewiring so that that fear factor is coming up less frequently. So one of the things that we're going to focus on, and I've used some of these words, and we want to just specify them, is that we have a fear ladder, exposures, and these are pieces of the puzzle of getting through those exposures so our kids are more effective at riding the wave every time. So our fear ladder is organized specific steps, which are pieces, is the larger list of exposures or fear practice, like the scary thing that a kid is going to practice. And we always start at the bottom, start from the easiest and climb the ladder to the harder thing. And exposures are planned practice of those small steps on the fear ladder. So each step is very small. My rule of thumb when I plan out a fear ladder or exposures for a child is that if it is, for instance, we're talking about eating and toileting, say it's eating in front of a class. Now, I'm never going to say, just go eat in front of the class. That's not going to fly. We're not successful there yet. I want to break that into 5 or 10 different steps in different environments that are easier first, and then we move into the hardest place. So always breaking down those steps into smaller ones, smaller than you might think, can be even more effective, because the smaller the step, the more likely the child is to feel like they're effective at doing a hard thing, which means they're going to be more, they tend to behave with more brave behaviors. So more behaviors that are approaching the scary thing more quickly. And we always want to start where they're successful, keep it super simple. And even if kids are jumping rungs on the ladder, we are going to keep it nice and slow and really planned out. Even if that next exposure is so easy, oh my gosh, it was so easy, we get to move on. But we're going to go nice and slow and really keep it methodical. And my little formula that I always like to talk about is when you practice that exposure on a fear ladder, and then you're also rewarding for doing the hard thing, then that means the brain, right? And that riding the wave, the brain is learning that hard things are no longer too hard because they're getting an extra reward for approach behaviors or whatever it is that is the goal. We do this over and over again, all the way through the fear ladder until the hard thing is no longer hard anymore. So when we use rewards and reinforcers, there's some tips and tricks that we want to make sure we leave you with. Always give that labeled praise. If you're not familiar with what a labeled praise is, it is a super specific praise. So say it's eating in public, great job eating at the park would be a labeled praise. So you have that positive evaluation and then the behavior that it is that you're actually praising. It's not just good job eating, it's good job eating at the park. And then maybe it's good job eating at the park in front of Aunt Susie, or good job eating in the park in front of Aunt Susie and Uncle Joe, right? So you're going to make it really specific so a kid knows exactly what they're being praised for, because kids, their brains don't automatically create those conclusions themselves, especially around the hard things that they're struggling with. So you can have stickers or earn special rewards. Those are great. Keep it really simple. Usually free things are sufficient. We want to give those reinforcers right away, that labeled praise. If it's a sticker for doing the hard thing, give it right away. And visual charts are really helpful so they know exactly what they need to do. Remember, the anxious brain tends to catastrophize. So it tends to think about the worst possible outcome. So it helps to make sure our kids know exactly what's expected, and for us to be the kind of the wall between showing fear. And so we're going to need to make sure we're presenting nice and strong for them. Okay. All right, I'm going to pop out of this.
And I am having anxious thoughts that I just want to make sure the chat works. So I'm hoping that anyone could just pop a hi in the chat, because so far I've only seen myself. So I just want to make sure
it's working.
It's working. So now
I'll throw in questions as they come up.
Yes, amazing. And I'm going, oh my goodness, all that excitement. Okay, now I'm going to share my screen.
I see so many names. It's nice to see you guys.
Okay. And then, okay. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Catherine. Okay, I do want to show something that's just sitting on my desk, which isn't free, but these are like tiny little plastic gems. And I've purchased a bag of, 100 of them. Greetings from Switzerland. Sabine, it's so nice to see you. Like 100 of them on Amazon, right? And so that's a really nice visual because they're all multicolored. Now, for some kids, just getting the gem is enough, which is great. Hey, we can just earn a gem and call it a day. And you happen to just have a bag of gems around your house. For other kids, it could be you get 5 gems and you earn Y, whatever Y is. I think Eleanor will probably agree that the more tangible and concrete the reward is, the better. So I will often go and have the child select the prize ahead of time. I might even purchase the prize. I might have it in my car, or I might have it, if it's an older kid, it might be like in a shopping cart or a special wish list in Amazon. We want it to mean something and want it to be immediate and tangible. And we don't want it to be too big, first of all, because that's not sustainable, or too far in the future. Like we'll go to Disney World for a variety of reasons why that's not easy, but also just things that are not sustainable, things that are going to take an incredibly long time. And I also, want to dispel any myths about kids getting dependent on rewards, because I have treated hundreds of kids and have never seen that happen, and have also never seen it happen where I have seen kids say like, hey, I used to get gems for X and now I don't anymore, or I used to get a lot of checks for answering my teacher in one word, but now I'm getting checks for certain things. And that's true. We might say, yeah, good noticing. And yeah, when things get harder, we change the things, but I've never seen a child get dependent on rewards or get greedy and reward hungry. So
kids love being independent. And so the reward they know is like a pair of crutches. At least I tell them directly, I'm like, this is your crutches to be able to walk back on your feet all alone. That's the goal. They all say, yes, it is the goal. You frame it that way. And then most of my kids say, I don't need the gems anymore. Let's go. And they level up and they're able to do that hard thing. When you
totally
get them on your team from the beginning, it goes a lot faster than you might.
Sure does. So I'm going to be talking about the bathroom. And what I'm going to start by saying is I'm not going to be talking about toilet training. That could be a totally different topic. So I do want to just preface that by saying we're not talking about toilet training and when to toilet train. We're talking about common bathroom concerns for kids with anxiety and with SM specifically. So if we think about the bathroom, we can think of lots of different fears that come up related to the bathroom. There are some social fears, right? Like, and these are things I've heard, feel free to pop it in the chat. Like someone's going to know I, went to the bathroom, even though we might say, of course, all people go to the bathroom. Someone's going to see my feet. They're going to hear me peeing, all those kinds of things, right? And there are more. Separation fears. I'm going to be alone. I'm scared to be by myself. What if I get locked in and can't get out? The light, it could be the bathroom or the toilet itself. A lot of kids I see have toilets at their schools or other places with these automatic sensors, so that like the light, like we never know when the toilet's going to flush, versus what we have in our house, which is, unless someone has an automatic toilet, we usually flush a toilet. It could be the noise, it could be the drain, it could be the sensory experience related to going to the toilet. It could be the toilet at home. You have a little stool or a squatty potty and it's a little bit more comfortable. We could talk about it for a long time. And then not to mention, it could maybe not be related to the going to the bathroom per se, but it's related to saying I need to go to the bathroom. And I will tell you that plenty of very well-intentioned people have said, or well-intended people have said, I put this little stick on the child's desk and all they need to do is wave the stick and say I need to go to show I need to go to the bathroom, or just give a thumb up. And for some kids, and I'm going to say a bunch of kids, that is actually enough as a temporary accommodation. And some kids might actually be verbal in their classroom and the teacher says, do you have to go to the bathroom or you don't? Because hopefully they know to ask forced choice questions, and the child is going to say, I don't, or they're going to shake their head, even if they really have to go. So we want to know what those bathroom worries are, and in a way that gets us information without doing too much planting, right? So we want to be sort of neutral about our fact finding. And so there's just lots of things that come up for the bathroom, and your child might fit in many of these categories or just one. So what we want to talk about is what Eleanor was saying, that we want to, this is just a sample bathroom ladder, right? And I'm talking about school, but in a few minutes, I will talk about other places. But the idea is, if we have a ladder, that's another word for a hierarchy. And if we know that going around that circle for negative reinforcement, there's a lot of practice. So let's just be conservative and say a child goes to the let's say a child could go to the bathroom twice a day at school. I think it could be more, but let's say twice. And you have 180 days of school. That's 360 practices of not going. That's a lot, right? And that's just 1 year of school. We could do math all day, but that's just an example. So we're going to need a lot of practice, and we're going to need to break it down. And so it could be, and again, this is just a sample. You want to sort of start with, what would be my end goal? Maybe the end goal is that the child is going to independently raise their hand and ask to use the bathroom, whether they're in front of the class or not. That might be quite hard. It involves speaking and also going, right? Maybe a step down from there, or let's go to the other end. Maybe the child is actually able to go to the bathroom, but regardless of how much they're prompted to let us know, they cannot. And so I don't know what Eleanor would say, and I'm curious, but a significant number of kids that I work with, when the teacher is instructed to say, Eleanor, it's time to go to the bathroom, go ahead and go. A lot of our anxious kids are also fairly compliant and rule following. I find that taking the do you need to go, would you like to try, but simply it's time to go ahead and go ahead and try, go ahead and sit, solves a lot of difficulty. Eleanor, do you see the same?
I see the same. And also the other thing that's coming to my mind is that it's taking out the, you're giving permission for them to walk across the room. And if they don't walk across the room, they're going to get more attention for not doing it than they are for going ahead and going. So for an anxious kid, if the avoidance is attention, if my teacher tells me to go, I'm going to walk very swiftly across the room.
Yes,
so that sounds like a great step one. And then maybe I'm given the option later.
Exactly. Now, someone wrote in the Q&A going with a buddy, which I actually had written down. I think that's an amazing idea. I don't see that as enabling. Someone will be like, well, that's a crutch that puts a burden on another kid. And I say, well, every kid in a classroom is a citizen who's helpful in a different way. I would hope that we could disperse the burden a little, and maybe I could go with Susie, maybe I could go with Mary. But if that buddy would be able to go with them, that would be a great temporary step. Maybe we then move to a nonverbal signal that we've practiced at home. It could be, bathroom, it could be toilet, it could be moving a little gem on the table. Then the child is prompted to ask for the bathroom verbally. So Eleanor, do you need to go to the bathroom right now or at the end of this class? You notice I didn't say, do you need to go to the bathroom now or not? Because I'm worried there's going to be an opt-out. Just like I don't say to kids, do you want to keep playing by yourself or join your friends? I say, would you like to join these friends or those friends? Then we're rewarding and reinforcing spontaneous asking to use the bathroom. We can even have a child, if we need to build in a step, just asking and not even needing to go, just ask to wash hands, ask to walk into the bathroom. And what I will just say across the board is tons of reinforcement. And some of the reinforcement could be, and you have to know your kid, if they do not want a gem in front of other people, then it's got to be private. If you have a kid that could care less and really loves it, great. We do want to instruct the teachers or whoever's working with your children in daycare, wherever, to have sort of a positive response, but not an over-the-top party response. It's not, Eleanor, you went to the bathroom. Oh my God. Blah, blah. It's more like, great job going to the bathroom. Great job using your signal. Great following my instruction, right? There's a very big difference between a party and a celebration and a labeled praise and paired with the reinforcement. Because kids often are really worried about the huge reaction. And so it's really helpful to just instruct. I like to write it out on a piece of paper, like what the teacher should say, because sometimes they worry and it makes really good sense. Like, oh my God, I want to be supportive, but I don't want to be too supportive. So that's one ladder.
One of my favorite framing here, Rachel, is for some kids who are a little bit more wary of practicing anxiety provoking situations, going to the bathroom is an independent thing on your own. And so we work on independent tasks that actually I know are very anxiety provoking to them, but that framing can work really well for your 8, 9, and 10-year-olds who really want to be seen as independent members of their community. And so that framing can work really well for those.
Absolutely.
Middle.
This is an example of a ladder that's let's say a more severe impairment. So it doesn't have, the child is just not going to the bathroom at all. They've been prompted to go. Maybe the counselors tried to get them to go. There's just not bathrooming, toileting happening at school. Is it ideal to have a parent come into the class or to come into the school? No, it's not my favorite thing to do. I try to be as least restrictive as possible. And especially when a child is withholding a lot or having significant accidents or restricting their fluids, we really need to nip that in the bud. So it might be that and if you want to know if during COVID this can be done, the answer is yes, it can. Of course, it was much more difficult 2 years ago. I will be 100% admitting of that, but I have a kid right now where this is pretty much the latter. So the parent might come to the school at a consistent time, and we will definitely answer that question because it's a good one. The parent takes the child to the bathroom, whether it's in the classroom or you might start, a good idea is like a different bathroom that's at a different location. So during COVID, and it was COVID concerns, I said, give me the bathroom that's closest to the exit for the parent. I just need them to walk in the building. And the idea is to have the parent take the child to the bathroom at school and alone. Alone doesn't mean an empty school building. It just means without other people there. And the ultimate goal, if the end goal is the child goes with a teacher without the parent, and another ladder step would be just go on their own, then we have to transition. We can't just have the parent continuing to take the child, because then I don't know many kids that are going to say, Mom, Dad, you don't need to come anymore. I think I'm ready to just go to number 5. So it's really important to then have the parent take the child to the bathroom, maybe with a staff member praising bathroom use, but not in the bathroom. So let's just say we'll call it Mom. Mom takes Eleanor to the bathroom. And when Eleanor comes out, the teacher or the aide says, Eleanor, great job using the bathroom. And he or she gives the gem. Why? We're shifting the reinforcement to coming from a different place. Then the parent does the same thing, and the staff is maybe a few feet closer. Now, this could go in these 5 steps, or I've seen put steps in between step 2 and 3. Standing at the door, but the teacher's facing away from the bathroom or the stall. Then maybe we switch and the staff meets to take the child to the bathroom and the parents outside the bathroom, but the teacher's closer to the child. And then we're doing this a bunch of times. And so as you see, again, is it ideal to have a parent come into the classroom or come into the school? No. And if we plan to go to number 4 or 5, we're probably going to need to break it down to steps 3, 2, or 1 before. In terms of how to have accidents, I think, or what to do with accidents, I think, obviously sometimes there's a lot of shame and the child really feels bad about it. Feels bad, they don't like how it feels, it's very upsetting, it's distressing, and sometimes it's very distressing for the parent and a teacher, and not overtly distressing to the child. And the way I approach it is to, of course, always have extra clothes at school, support independence as much as possible, keep the tone very neutral and non-shaming, take care of it very quickly. There's no like, why didn't you tell me you needed to go to the bathroom? Like none of that, just, it's time to get changed, or go ahead and change your clothes, like using, again, like depending on the age of the child and how much support they need, but that it just be like sort of a swift, neutral and positive, no shaming, and just sort of positive transition. I think that is like a really important thing. I'm going to let Eleanor answer the next one. So then just some other things for school. Collaboration is key. I mean, I think that's pretty obvious. No parent or babysitter is going to walk into a school and take a kid out of their classroom to go to the bathroom. So having collaboration, if you have a 504 IEP, this is probably going to be something that's on there, not probably, definitely, and making a planned ladder. Other bathroom needs, like using a different toilet, right? So it could be that we temporarily use a toilet in the nurse's office or near the counselor's office. Going with a buddy. I really loved that idea. I think that's great. And so those are some important things. I think you can definitely apply these strategies to bathroom use in other places, right? So for example, using the bathroom at a restaurant, you could do the same thing. I'm not going to take the time to do it, but like meaning, let's say your child requires you to come into the bathroom all the way in and close the stall and all that kinds of thing. You can be like, what is my goal? My goal is I'd love to be on the other side of the door. And so you break that down into smaller steps. Or you can do the same thing where you faded in the teacher and you fade in grandma or Aunt Susie or Uncle John. The IEP question is a larger question, and I would really encourage folks to go to our YouTube channel for some videos and webinars there. And we're going to have our email at the end that we could absolutely speak to. And then just for more severe symptoms, you really want to start small. And so I have a family where this has been a case where the parent was taking the child to the bathroom in the classroom and it was not happening. She was very anxious, also very combative about it. She was very upset, and that makes sense. And so we moved it to a bathroom off the grounds of school, but within the vicinity. So like let's say 50 feet away in let's say a library or another building, and then moving closer, and then even sitting for 30 seconds, even with clothing on, like it's similar to how we would do toilet training. So we use shaping meaning getting closer to the desired goal. And I want to just say my opinion, and I think Eleanor would agree, is that we have to do what works. I do not have a problem giving a child an iPhone or using a YouTube video with a song. I don't know why Baby Shark just popped into my head, which I wouldn't recommend because you'll never get it out of your head. But it's anxiety provoking. And if the goal is to get the child on the toilet, and anyone, I'm not going to go too into detail, but anyone who wants to know how your body needs to be to actually physically eliminate, you can't be as tense. So if the child needs to watch a little video while they're going, I think that's fine. I'm not worried it's going to happen and be there forever. And so just in the interest of time, I'm just going to give like a super quick case example, which is just really to highlight what I've already talked about, which is this idea of being creative with and keeping the eye on transitioning to more independent support. So this idea of having a child where they're not able to use the bathroom at all at school and having the parent take them. And then the really important step is just saying that needing to fade on to whoever else is going to pick up the responsibility, if that makes sense. Because if the parent just takes the child to the bathroom and does that a few times and then expects the child to then go either independently or with another adult without there being some kind of transfer, my worry thought is that it's not going to work. And I will just say that, while we're not going to talk about getting an IEP or 504, if your child has bathroom or eating concerns and it's not on their 504 IEP, convening your team and saying, this is a significant concern and related to my child's anxiety, it needs to be on there, is completely reasonable. So I am going to hand this over to my friend Eleanor and take over the chat.
Moving fast.
Always goes so fast.
Lots of good questions. Okay, we're going to talk quickly about eating. So keep everything in mind that Rachel was talking about in terms of how to set up these exposures. Put this on slideshow. I think you guys can see me. So we want to keep in mind all of the processes and the little steps, and we're going to map that on to eating fears. Really common eating fears here are going to be the social aspects. Can they hear me? Am I chewing loud? Who's looking at me? Is someone staring at me? Is this teacher that I'm afraid of in the cafeteria? Maybe my SM is impacting my impairment to talk to them and my ability to eat in front of them. You have more of that like social feel to the anxiety eating can get that impairment. It can be impaired as well, of course. Trying new foods, trying new things. Is the food similar to what they're eating at home? Is it about the food? Is there a occupational therapy sensory need that we need to look into? Oftentimes school food is very different than food that kids eat at home. So we want to make sure that there's actually food that the kid does like and is comfortable eating. Keep that in mind in terms of hierarchies. Asking for a snack, walking across the room to get the snack, especially for kids who have lunch boxes, that can be really tough. Maybe opening the snack is really hard, or a kid doesn't know how to get it open. So using easy open Tupperwares and things like that. All of those things and many others can be good to consider when we're looking at how these eating fears are showing up. Also the timing, if kids lose track of time or they're so anxious that they know they have 20 minutes to eat, but I'm so anxious I can't get started. They may look really distracted or and not be able to eat fast enough. So then they're hungry the rest of the day. And then it's really hard to be brave if I'm hungry. We all know that as adults, but our kids, remember, they're not understanding that yet. And that is normal. So let's take a look at this sample eating hierarchy here, that ladder, which is the same as a hierarchy. So we'll start at 1, and this is just an example. Of course, every kid's will be different, but we want to talk about, so this is a kid that is having a hard time eating in the cafeteria. So first, for this child, we're starting with eating a number of bites. This is a child who can eat, can get their box open, can get there, is okay in the room, but just the eating is impaired. When you have more complex kids where it's the eating and the social anxiety and the food itself and getting it open, then we would maybe want to start in another room. But for this kid, child eats a predetermined number of bites. And remember, each bite, what are they getting? A little sticker. Good job eating your food, right? And you can even, right, say it's 5 bites. Write the little circles right next to in their lunchbox, right? And just check it off as they go. You don't even have to say a thing, that you know the goal to eat 5 bites, right? And then the next rung on the ladder here, child eats bites of food, of their favorite food, away from peers at the end of the table, right? So you're getting closer to everybody. And then you're eating the same amount of bites of their favorite food, right? You're going to pick something that's easier next to their peers, and you see how one thing is changing at a time all the way up. And this is a pretty general, simple one, but we want to make sure that only one thing is changing at a time. A couple of strategies here. Start with, like I said, favorite foods. Preferred foods are always going to be easier. If your kid eats pasta, send pasta. If they eat grilled cheese with a specific kind of cheese, do that. Remember, when you're practicing eating in a new place, you're not practicing eating a new food unless you're practicing eating a new food. Change one thing at a time. Make it easy. So then they get to be rewarded for eating that preferred food with their friends or with the my dog is barking, or with the teacher, whoever it is, wherever we are. You're going to identify a key person at school who will prompt the practice, and you're going to have them practice in a quiet location. So you're limiting the number of factors that are or could impact the ability to be successful in eating at school. Make it easy. It's going to feel too simple sometimes, but that can be the right place to start. Again, remember, we're trying to build up their self-efficacy so the kid feels effective and can feel that pride that comes with reaching a goal. Consider those social dynamics to reduce difficulty, and maybe even choosing a preferred friend when you are adding a friend to that. Let the child choose which friend they want to practice in front of. Other things, visual cues are great. Some kids forget the process of eating. First, I open my box. I've done this where you tape it onto the front of the lunchbox and it just says, first, open. 2, open your sandwich. 3, right? And you can just lay it out there, especially if they can read, or if they can't read yet, use pictures so they know exactly what to do. Again, we're decreasing the number of unknowns to increase the likelihood of success. An eating timer is great. Now, for some kids, this is really triggering. Some anxious kids hate timers because they feel like they're fighting it and then they're going to run out of time and then they never even take a bite. So trial that with kids to see if that's an appropriate thing. Utensils versus no utensils. If kids are having a hard time or they're feeling messy with utensil, ditch them. Just send peanut butter and jelly sandwich if that's something they eat. Make it easy. Easy open containers. We talked about that. And then again, using TV, something, a show or something like that is fine, although we would want to fade it out. But if that gets them eating and that gets food in their bodies and their basic needs are met, I'm all for it for a while. This is a more severe kid, and in the interest of time, I'm going to leave it. And because we've sort of talked about how to break this down. If you have additional questions, we can go through it in Q&A, and feel free to follow up with email as well if you need additional help. And we can, Rachel and I have talked about writing some additional content for you guys on this because we do know there's a lot to cover. I'm also going to skip case examples because we've kind of gone through them, how to break it down. Just remember, when you look at this, you can write this out at home. Just when you look at this, break each, you can start with 5 and maybe your ladder is 20 steps. Continue to break them down until only one thing is changing at a time, people, places, or activities. The same thing as we talk about in treating selective mutism. We want to talk a little bit about how to help a kid feel brave and parental behavior, and I mean that generally, as a reaction to our child's distress. We got ourselves into this because we were really good parents trying to do the best we can for our kids. Our teachers are amazing and everyone loves them. We don't want to see them suffer. And so when children are struggling, we want to go and rescue, as Rachel was telling us at the beginning. Ride the wave, go back, right? Remember, it's rolling hills. One exposure, it comes down, the anxiety goes back down. Each day it's going to have multiple, and that's okay. And we want to help our kids feel successful. So when you're seeing crying distress, we can see aggressive behavior, debate, or negotiating. These are all symptoms of what too much anxiety can look like. And so we want to take tabs and make sure we're helping them manage that anxiety, teaching skills to keep it low enough so the exposure is accessible rather than completely overwhelming. For you guys as parents, and I know many of you are clinicians as well, when we are working with our children who are anxious, one of the things that we want to make sure we're doing is staying regulated, which we'll talk in a minute about. Rachel was mentioning the difference between enabling versus accommodating. So I want you to remember that what is an appropriate accommodation, an appropriate goal for me today or Rachel today might not be the appropriate goal tomorrow. Tomorrow that could be enabling if I've already mastered something. So that is a moving target. Keep that in mind. But we want to reduce reassurance. Reduce saying, you're okay, you're okay, you're okay, you can do it. Now, while we reduce that, we do want to reinforce, I love how you're being so brave and trying something hard today. Nice work doing the hard thing. I see you're opening your lunchbox, or you're walking to the toilet, whatever it is. So you're opening your lunchbox. Wow, you can just describe, right? You're opening your sandwich. Oh, you're getting it ready. Here's a sticker for getting ready to eat. Oh, you took a bite. Nice earning your first sticker of eating at the table with your peers, and then make that praise really specific. Now, when we use that praise there, it tends to help reduce our anxiety because it feels good for us to be able to give it. So I like to frame that as something that's really a tip for you as well as a parent in helping your kid implement these really hard things. It's normal for you to kind of freak out inside. That's called being a good parent, and you have a normal response that's trying to keep you alive. But make sure you're practicing that calm, neutral presence. Can you keep yourself regulated? Personally, I'm a big fan of having parents practice this outright. Mommy and daddy are learning something new today. It can be completely random. And I might need your help to learn how to do it. I don't know how to draw this. Oh, I messed up, and have the parent purposely mess up or not be able to do it. So the kid gets to feel empowered. And guess what? Then they get to see you practicing being calm. And then you're doing this beautiful modeling for your child that then when you go into the school and do the hard thing, you can come back to, when mommies and daddies have a hard time with something, we can get help and I can ask for help. Same thing for the kid. So we want to model that, use our own coping skills, got to take care of yourself to help your kids. And that acknowledgement that practice is okay and everyone has something they're working on is so key. And that fake it till you make it. Just your job is to look and feel as calm as possible to help your kid do these hard things. And if it's too much for you, it's also, just want to give you license, break it down even further. If you're having too hard of a time approaching it, it's probably too hard for your kid too. I'm going to go quickly through this, but it will be there for you. Some of this is repeated. Good parents want to fix. When our kids are with a trusted adult and we're freaking out, kids pick up on that. And that regulation matters. Keep that calm tone really well, right? I think one last thing, that we want to cover is who is on the Brave team. That cohesion between school and parents is so key, especially in our 2-parent homes, or if you have grandparents that are also primary caregivers or aunts and uncles, whoever's on that, what I call Brave team, we need to be using the same language, because what we want to avoid is accidentally avoiding only having the brave behavior happen with one caregiver. We want it to be happening with everybody. So I like to say, mom 1 does it in the morning, mom 2 does it in the afternoon, or mom does it in the morning, dad does it in the afternoon, or a dad and dad, whatever the family, however the family's structured, and then have that switch. And so everyone's flexible about when we're prompting these behaviors, especially at home, so we can make sure we're getting consistent generalization of brave initiation of eating in this instance, rather than it being just paired with one parent, which can be hard to undo later. And it just puts a lot of pressure on that parent. It'll feel better for you if you have that support outside of just when you're doing the brave practice with your kid. Of course, we're all practicing distress tolerance here. New hard things require practice, and that awareness and trust, right? Slow is fast here. Don't try to rush through this. slow is fast, slow is fast. That can be your little motto, one thing at a time. Maybe it's even one step every couple of days, and that's okay. If you need time to get your footing and to feel really strong in what you're helping your kid do, that's okay. And simplify. This is not as complicated as it sounds, but I'm glad we got to learn it together. So you have a little bit more trust and a little bit more backbone of what to do so you're able to implement. Here's some great resources, and we're going to go into the Q&A now.
I think we have answered every open question
Great.
on the Q&A.
Awesome.
And I'm just going to reopen the chat. I know we went really quickly, but I'm
Right.
curious, we have a few more minutes certainly to talk about other questions, you know, answer other particular questions. I will start talking because something came to mind, but interrupt me.
Go ahead.
In terms of like, who can help with something like this? At a school, often a teacher might be the obvious choice and a hard choice, because a teacher has to maintain a ratio. They're not going to be able to leave the room. So while that might not be the best choice in the moment. So being creative, I don't actually personally care who the person is. So I don't have a strong preference of a counselor over an aide or a teaching assistant or whoever. I will take who I can get. So I think just thinking about who can be helpful, it should be a person the child knows and sees a lot. I think for eating, it's a little different because then I think you think about like the cafeteria staff or lunch aides or things like that. But I just think I just think about those things in terms of sustainability. And then I just think as some of us are thinking about camp, all of these things really apply at camp as well. I think some of the good news about like a town camp or a private camp or a church related camp is that usually like staffing is less of an, not totally a non-issue, but it's not one teacher with 25 kids. It's going to be multiple people, but the same strategies can really be applied for that. So those were some of the things that sort of came up for me. And the last thing I'll say, and I'm going to turn it over to Eleanor, is could siblings help? Yes. So if you're sending your child to a summer camp or, you know, summer school, or the child's at school, could their sibling help? Yes. And we want to make sure that we create and maintain independence for that other child, right? So it wouldn't be my preference to have the sibling be a long-term solution or the only buddy, but if that's something that's temporary accommodation, for sure.
Absolutely. I think those are all good things to consider. I think the rule of thumb that I go on is most things are free game to use as tools as long as they don't stay. The goal is always to help the child be independent and to be really successful at doing things on their own, because that's what's expected in school, right? So how do we promote the process towards that? And more as I do this work longer and longer, I think really leveling with the kid is really helpful. A lot of your parents. And so just sitting down with them and being like, you know, this is hard. Validate their struggle. And you tend to get a really nice engagement with it, or at least I do, far more than you would think. Kids know what's hard. They know that they're struggling. They want to be seen. I always say I help kids feel seen, heard, and loved in a way that their bodies can internalize, which I love so much, because what we were doing before wasn't working, right? And we got into this mess, and it's okay to be like, honey, we're in this mess and this is hard.
Right.
Level with them and let them be part of their own solution. That can be really empowering, and set the goals with them. It doesn't need to be something that we do for them.
Yeah.
But approaching from that team, like I am on your team, and my job is to make sure I find these resources for you as your parent or your therapist, whoever you are for them. That can be really helpful, even for like your 3s and 4s. It's kind of shocking how young you can get it.
I totally forgot to put our and I don't remember if I put our end slide with our email address on there, so I'm going to put it up again. But I totally, I can't share for some reason. Can you?
I'll reshare it.
Okay. I was also going to say you shouldn't expect necessarily full agreement, right? So the child might not say like, yeah, this is a great idea. In fact, they probably will say, I'm not going to do that. Much like many of our kids have said, And the kids I see
Absolutely.
every week, I'm not going to talk at school. I did this yesterday, but I'm not going to do it again tomorrow. And that doesn't really require a response. Like,
Right.
like duly noted in my mind, and we're still going to do it. Right.
One thing I like to say to that is, yes, we see this all the time. I like to be like, so you're telling me that it's still feeling too hard. Well, let's break it down even more. Because my job as your helper, I describe myself like a brave coach, or it depends on the kid, but as your helper, your person to teach you how to have brave muscles is to make this as easy as possible for you.
Right.
It should not be hard.
Yeah.
And then you just level there and they're like, okay.
Yeah.
And then it turns into this like kind of jive of how easy can you make it, right? And you get there and you usually can get some ground to get through that resistance. And remember, resistance is communication. They're communicating that what you just said is a no-go.
Yeah.
And that is, the anxiety is too much, or I can't imagine a world in which
I'm going to interrupt Eleanor because I just saw a bunch of Q&As coming through.
Good.
So in the Q&A, is there a PDF with basic SM facts and tips or step-by-step instructions? Yes, on our Selective Mutism Association website. So take a look there. And Eleanor, if you can go in here also and look and just, and so, you know, I do think there's someone saying I have a student who will go to the bathroom and told, he has set bathroom times and even as a wash, yet only go when the teacher tells to go, and has a lot of accidents more than not, and won't say anything when she has an accident. And so like, we have to then tell her to change her clothes. I think sometimes, you know, it may be that you need, almost like potty training, you may need to increase the frequency of time that the child's going. Sometimes I'll give like 1 gem for doing X, but like 8 gems for letting us know something and really shaping that down like very significantly. And so it may just be that the times aren't enough. It could also be as simple as like the child's not completely voiding. So maybe if they're having accidents and they're going frequently. So those are just like a few thoughts. So that's just one of those. Let's see.
There's someone who's asking about the child is not able to go to the bathroom. She's withholding urine in her current school, but she's switching schools, and the parent's asking what to do.
Yeah.
What I would do is underreact and then also practice going to the bathroom at home in the new school. Right. So you can, when she's at home, you can start from there and just kind of start from scratch. About practicing going in new places rather than in what in the SM world we call contaminated places.
Right.
And that can be helpful.
Yeah.
So I might start just with the next year. So.
I agree. I think like someone saying, should we put my child at summer camp where they're going to start in August and get used to the location, even though it might not be the exact location? Yes, I think sometimes it's about speaking practice, right? Like that's okay. I also think that that's okay. I think going into the environment, even if it's the not exact location, is fine. I also think a really important question that might not be satisfactory answer is if you have a child going to a camp for a week, you're right that you're probably not going to get the support that you need, just because by the time unless you've planned ahead and you've done this ahead of time and visited the school, but by the time we get started, it's already going to be Friday and camp is over. So in those situations, we want to manage, like do like damage control or plan ahead and cope ahead for things, you know, extra change of clothes. Are you going to take the child to the bathroom right at drop off, right when you pick up, or eating similar things? Because I think there are some situations where by the time it gets started, it's already ending. Now, I'm not saying that's a satisfactory answer, but now if you have a camp coming up in 4 weeks, certainly reaching out to the camp, visiting the camp, letting them know, like any of those things and practicing, I'm all in favor for. I think it's just more that there are certain situations that we just can't necessarily totally, you know, prepare for.
Yes.
I think we could probably answer 1 or 2 more because of CEs, we cannot go over time. And, you know, for a child that's not going to school at all, even with a parent or teacher guarding the door, I would say that you probably have to start even lower than that and say, this is just too hard right now. See if you can get into the school on the weekend. I talked about another patient who first used the school at used the bathroom at the library nearby. And we were like, great using the bathroom near the school. Great getting closer to the school. It may be that you're not going to have success likely with trying to get this power struggle through. We got to be like, this is just really hard, and let's practice somewhere else. Might start at the home, but it could be at the home and then like somewhere that's not school. But I think you have to really keep going down the ladder.
Yeah, and I think what that really kind of brings home, and is a nice way to wrap up, is that every kid is different. Every, people talk about severity and all these things. Kids should be able to go to the bathroom and eat at school. They're there about a third of their life. It's a lot of time for them to feel restricted and like they can't drink water or eat or whatever it is that your child or a patient is struggling with. And when we really stop putting the pressure on it, relieve it. We're not even going to try this right now, right? Take a step back, because we can't force them to do it, and nor is that fair. And that doesn't feel good for you, and it definitely doesn't feel good for them. So really just be like, this is, just like Rachel was saying, this is too hard. We're going to start over.
Exactly.
Right? And back completely out. And then if you need to schedule trips to the gas station while they're at school, do that.
Yep. I agree.
And it's interfering on your life. And so we want to get out of that pattern as quickly as possible. But I would get some help to do that if you're having that much trouble, for sure.
It's been a pleasure. It always goes way too fast, and I'm excited though, but thank you for the participation. Eleanor, as always, I love being with you. And so I hope people also, this is just a reminder that our virtual conference is in October. So we're really hoping that people will join us for that conference. So you can find out that information on our website. And I hope everybody has a great afternoon and evening.
Enjoy your day, everybody. Thanks for such great participation.
Thank you.